My mother's laughter echoed through the Portland courthouse hallway like broken glass. Sharp, cruel, dismissive. The kind of laugh that says you're nothing, you've always been nothing, and you always will be. My father stood beside her, arms crossed, that same smug expression he'd worn my entire life plastered across his face. They thought they were about to embarrass me in front of everyone who mattered. They had no idea who I'd become. Because the woman walking toward them wasn't the desperate daughter they'd abandoned at 17. I was Ella Montgomery, senior partner at the most prestigious law firm in the Pacific Northwest, and I was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. But let me take you back to where this story really begins. Because understanding how sweet this moment was requires knowing exactly how bitter everything that came before it tasted. I was 17 years old, standing in the June heat at Lincoln High School's graduation ceremony in Salem, Oregon. Around me, families screamed and cheered, held up homemade signs with glitter and pride. Cameras flashed. Fathers whistled. Mothers cried happy tears into tissues they'd brought just for this moment. I searched the crowd for 20 minutes, squinting against the sun, hoping maybe this time would be different. Maybe just this once, they'd show up for something that mattered to me. They didn't come. My best friend Maya's mom noticed me standing alone after the ceremony, still wearing my cap and gown while everyone else celebrated. She pulled me into a hug that lasted too long because she knew. She'd always known. "Come have dinner with us, sweetheart," she whispered, and I went because the alternative was going home to an empty house and pretending it didn't hurt. When I finally got home around 9 that night, still wearing my graduation gown because somehow taking it off felt like admitting defeat, my parents were in the living room watching television. Not out of town. Not dealing with an emergency. Just sitting there like it was any other Thursday. "You missed my graduation," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. My mother, Sandra, didn't even look away from the screen. "Oh, was that today?" I completely forgot. My father, Richard, glanced at me with the kind of casual indifference you'd give a telemarketer. "Don't be so dramatic, Ella. It's just high school. Everyone graduates. It's not special." Something inside me cracked that night. Not broke, because broken things shatter all at once. This was slower, more deliberate, like ice forming over water 1 degree at a time. "I got into Portland State," I said, still standing there like an idiot waiting for them to care. "Full academic scholarship." My mother finally turned. "Portland? That's 2 hours away. Who's going to cook for your father?" Not congratulations. Not "we're proud of you." Not even basic acknowledgement of what I'd accomplished. Just logistics about who would make dinner. My father stood up, walked past me toward the kitchen. "College is a waste of time anyway. You should get a real job, start contributing to this household. We've supported you for 17 years. Time to pay us back." I stood there in that living room, graduation gown still on, holding my diploma, and made a decision that would change everything. I was done. Done waiting for them to see me. Done hoping they'd love me the way parents were supposed to love their children. Done making myself smaller so they could feel bigger. "I'm leaving in August," I said quietly. "And I'm never coming back." My mother laughed. That same cruel laugh I'd hear years later in the courthouse. "You won't last a semester. You're not smart enough, not tough enough. You'll come crawling back here begging for help, and maybe if you apologize properly, we'll consider letting you stay." I moved to Portland with everything I owned in 4 garbage bags and $217 in my pocket. The university provided housing, but I needed money for books, food, transportation. So I worked. God, did I work. I waitressed breakfast shifts at a diner on Burnside Street from 5 to 9 in the morning, went to classes until 4, worked retail at a clothing store until 9 at night, then stayed up past midnight doing homework in the cramped dorm room I shared with 2 other girls. My roommate Jessica would watch me sometimes, this look of concern on her face. "Ella, when do you sleep?" "Weekends," I'd lie, because admitting I was surviving on 3 to 4 hours a night felt like admitting I might not make it. But here's what my parents never understood. When you tell someone they're not good enough their entire life, two things can happen. They can believe you and shrink into that narrative. Or they can decide to prove you so spectacularly wrong that the whole world sees it. I chose the second option with a fury that kept me moving even when my body begged me to stop. My political science professor, Dr. Helena Warren, pulled me aside after class one October afternoon during my sophomore year. "Your paper on judicial reform was exceptional. Have you thought about law school?" I almost laughed. Law school? I was barely affording undergraduate education despite the scholarship. That's not really an option for someone like me. Dr. Warren looked at me with the kind of knowing that only comes from personal experience. Someone like you? You mean someone brilliant, hardworking, and determined? Because those are exactly the people who should go to law school. She handed me a folder. Applications for early decision programs. Most have full need-based financial aid. And Ella? Don't ever call yourself someone like me again. You're extraordinary. Start believing it. I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after that conversation. Because nobody in my entire life had ever called me extraordinary. Nobody had ever suggested I was capable of more than the bare minimum. That night, I started researching law schools. The LSAT nearly broke me. While other students took prep courses that cost thousands of dollars, I studied using library books and free online resources, waking up at 4 in the morning to squeeze and practice tests before my breakfast shift. I took the test on 3 hours of sleep, hands shaking from exhaustion and anxiety, convinced I'd fail. I scored in the 97th percentile. The letter from Lewis and Clark Law School arrived on a rainy March afternoon. Full scholarship. Stipend for living expenses. A personal note from the dean: "Your application essay about overcoming family adversity to pursue justice was one of the most compelling we've ever received. We'd be honored to have you join our community." I should have been celebrating. Instead, I sat on my dorm room floor holding that letter, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Because for the first time in my life, someone was honoring me. Choosing me. Seeing something in me worth investing in. Maya called that night. "Did you tell your parents?" "Why would I?" "Because it's huge, Ella. This is incredible news." I stared at the acceptance letter. They told me I'd fail. That I wasn't smart enough. Telling them now doesn't change who they are. It just gives them another opportunity to diminish what I've accomplished. So what are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I'm going to be so successful they can't ignore me. I'm going to become everything they said I'd never be. And when they finally realize what they lost, it'll be too late. But what happened next shocked everyone, including me. Law school was brutal. Not the academics, I could handle those. It was everything else. The student next to me in contracts class casually mentioned his father's law firm, the summer associate position waiting for him, the apartment in the Pearl District his parents bought as an investment. Another classmate talked about her family's vacation home in Bend where she'd go to de-stress during finals. I went to the campus food bank to stretch my stipend, picked up freelance legal research gigs for extra money, and pretended the constant anxiety about rent and groceries was normal. The imposter syndrome was suffocating. Every time I walked into class, I felt like someone would realize I didn't belong there, that I was just a girl from Salem whose parents didn't even come to her high school graduation. But then something shifted during my second year. A professor needed research assistance for a major case involving employment discrimination against women in corporate law. The pay was minimal, but the experience was invaluable. I worked 18-hour days, diving into case law, finding precedents nobody else had considered, building arguments so tight they couldn't be dismantled. We won. Not just won, we set a precedent that changed employment law across Oregon. The senior partner from Morrison and Associates who'd been consulting on the case approached me at the celebration dinner. Margaret Chen was legendary, a woman who'd built her career in the 70s when female lawyers were treated like secretaries who'd wandered into the wrong room. You're the one who found the Thomas versus Henderson precedent, aren't you? I nodded, suddenly nervous. Margaret Chen was the kind of lawyer I dreamed of becoming. That was brilliant work. Innovative thinking. We need lawyers like you at Morrison and Associates. When you graduate, call me. She handed me her card. Actually, call me next week. I have a summer associate position opening up. It's yours if you want it. I wanted to cry. Again. Because someone believed in me, not because of who my family was, but because of who I was becoming. The summer at Morrison and Associates changed my trajectory entirely. I worked on high-stakes litigation, corporate mergers, intellectual property disputes. The learning curve was vertical, but I absorbed everything like someone who knew this might be her only chance. Margaret became my mentor, teaching me not just about law but about presence, about owning space in rooms full of men who assumed you were someone's assistant. Never apologize for being smart, she told me one evening when we were working late on a securities fraud case. Men do it all the time, and nobody questions it. You do it, and suddenly you're arrogant. Own your intelligence, Ella. Make them uncomfortable with how brilliant you are. By the time I graduated, third in my class, Morrison and Associates offered me a full-time position. Within 3 years, I was leading cases other associates wouldn't touch. Complex litigation that required hundreds of hours of research and razor-sharp strategic thinking. I won more than I lost, built a reputation for being thorough, relentless, and unshakable under pressure. At 29, I made junior partner. At 33, senior partner. The youngest in the firm's history. My office overlooked the Willamette River, floor-to-ceiling windows, art that cost more than my childhood home. I drove a Tesla, wore designer suits, lived in a Pearl District penthouse. Everything my parents said I'd never achieve, I'd accomplished before 35. But here's the thing about success built on proving someone wrong. It's never quite as satisfying as you imagine it'll be. Because the people you're trying to prove wrong have to actually see it, acknowledge it, for the vindication to feel real. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 18 years. No calls, no emails, no birthday cards. Complete silence. Exactly what I'd promised myself that graduation night. I'd moved on, built a life, surrounded myself with people who chose to be in my corner. Then Maya called with news that changed everything. Your parents are being sued, she said, her voice tight with that particular tone that meant the information was messy. Maya had become a paralegal at a smaller firm in Salem, still connected to all the gossip from our hometown. Okay? What does that have to do with me? Ella, it's bad. Financial fraud involving a community center development project. Multiple families lost their retirement savings. The prosecutor is going for maximum penalties. Your dad could go to prison. I felt nothing. Not sympathy, not satisfaction. Just a hollow sort of distance. He made his choices. Your mom called my mom. She's desperate. She wants you to represent them. Now I laughed. The audacity was almost impressive. Let me get this straight. They haven't contacted me in 18 years. Told me I'd fail at everything. Didn't show up for my high school graduation, let alone anything after. And now that they're in trouble, suddenly they remember I exist? That's exactly what I said. But Ella, your mom is telling everyone you're her successful daughter, that you're this big-shot lawyer who's going to save them. She's been showing people articles about your cases, pretending like she's been supportive this whole time. Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest. Anger, yes, but something else too. An opportunity. Tell your mom to tell my mom that if she wants to talk to me, she can come to Portland. My office. Next Tuesday at 2. Both of them. Maya hesitated. Are you going to help them? I'm going to give them exactly what they deserve. They showed up early, which surprised me. My assistant informed me they'd been in the lobby since 1:30, both dressed like they were attending a funeral. Appropriate, considering what I was about to do to their expectations. I made them wait until 2:15. Not because I was running late. Because I wanted them to sit in that expensive lobby with its marble floors and fresh flowers and original artwork, surrounded by evidence of everything they said I'd never accomplish. When my assistant finally showed them into my office, my mother's eyes went wide. She'd aged badly, stress and poor choices written across her face in deep lines. My father looked smaller somehow, diminished, like someone had let the air out of him. "Ella," my mother breathed, looking around the office. "This is incredible. We're so proud of you." I didn't stand. Didn't offer them seats. Just looked at them with the same cold indifference they'd shown me for 17 years. "You're not proud of me. You're desperate. There's a difference." My father tried his old authoritative voice, the one that used to make me feel small. "Now Ella, we know things were difficult when you were younger, but we're family. Family helps each other." "Family?" I let the word hang there. "You mean like how family shows up for high school graduations? Or how family supports their daughter through college? Or how family acknowledges achievements instead of predicting failure?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Performative, calculated. We made mistakes. We were young parents, stressed about money. But we always loved you." "No." My voice was steel now, the voice I used in depositions when witnesses tried to lie. "You loved yourselves. I was an inconvenience. An expense. Someone to mock and diminish so you could feel superior." "We came here for help," my father said, and I could hear the desperation creeping in. "The charges against us are fabricated. We're innocent. We need a good lawyer." I opened a folder on my desk. Inside was every piece of information I'd gathered since Maya's call. Bank records, testimony from defrauded families, paper trails showing exactly how my parents had manipulated investors in the community center project. They weren't innocent. Not even close. "You need an excellent lawyer," I corrected. "The prosecution has a strong case. Financial fraud, wire fraud, potential RICO charges. We're talking 15 to 20 years in federal prison." My mother went pale. "Can you make it go away?" "Could I?" "Probably. I've successfully defended worse people than you." I closed the folder. "But I'm not going to." The silence in that office was deafening. "What?" My father stood up, anger replacing desperation. "You'd let your own parents go to prison? You're not my parents. You're two people who happened to create me biologically and then spent 17 years making sure I knew how little that meant to you. I don't owe you anything." My mother was crying now, real tears this time. "Please, Ella. We'll lose everything. The house, our savings. We'll go to prison. You committed crimes. There are consequences. That's how justice works." My father's face went red. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we did for you." And there it was. The real them, stripped of the desperate performance. Still trying to make me the villain in their story. I stood up finally, walking to the window, looking out at the city I'd conquered through sheer force of will. "I'm going to give you something, though. One gift, because unlike you, I'm capable of basic human decency." They both leaned forward, hope flickering. "I'm going to refer you to an excellent criminal defense attorney. Martin Rodriguez. He's expensive, but he's good. If there's any possible defense for what you did, he'll find it." I turned back to face them. "But I'm also going to tell him the truth. That you're guilty. That the evidence is overwhelming. So he'll advise you to take whatever plea deal the prosecutor offers, because going to trial will only make things worse." My mother stood up, reaching toward me. "Ella, please. We're sorry. We're so sorry for everything. Sorry you got caught. Sorry you need something from me. Not sorry for who you were when sorry might have actually mattered." Security escorted them out 10 minutes later, my mother sobbing, my father still muttering about ungrateful children. I returned to my desk, picked up the phone, and called Martin Rodriguez myself. Explained the situation, sent him the referral, and asked him as a personal favor to do the best he could for them despite everything. Because that's who I'd become. Someone who helped people even when they didn't deserve it. Not because of who they were, but because of who I'd chosen to be. The trial took place 6 months later. They took the plea deal, like Martin advised. My father got 8 years, my mother got 5. I didn't attend the sentencing hearing. There was no satisfaction in watching them go to prison, no moment of triumphant revenge. But what happened next was something I never could have predicted. Portland State University contacted me that spring. They were dedicating a new building, the Center for First-Generation Student Success, designed to support students from low-income families or difficult backgrounds. They wanted to name it after someone who embodied the mission. We'd like to name it the Ella Montgomery Center, the dean told me over coffee. Your story, your journey, it represents everything we want the space to represent. Resilience, determination, the belief that where you come from doesn't determine where you're going. I couldn't speak. This institution that had given me my first chance, that had seen potential in a scared girl from Salem with nothing but determination, wanted to honor me. Not just with words, but with something permanent. A building where my name would exist long after I was gone, helping students like who I used to be. The dedication ceremony happened on a September afternoon, unseasonably warm, golden light spilling across campus. Hundreds of people attended. Former professors, colleagues, students, friends. Margaret Chin gave a speech about mentorship and paying success forward. Maya cried through her entire reading about our friendship. When they unveiled the building name, seeing Ella Montgomery Center for First-Generation Student Success in those bold letters, I finally let myself cry. Not sad tears. Not angry tears. Relief tears. Because that scared 17-year-old girl in the graduation gown, standing alone in a crowd of celebrating families, had made it. Against every odd, every obstacle, every voice that said she wasn't enough. Someone sent my parents photos of the dedication ceremony. I didn't know who, didn't really care. But 3 weeks later, I received a letter forwarded through my assistant. Prison mail, my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away. Then curiosity won. The letter was long, handwritten, surprisingly honest. She talked about their marriage, about being 20 years old with a baby they didn't want, about my father's gambling problem they'd hidden for years. About their own terrible childhoods, the cycle of emotional neglect they'd perpetuated without realizing it. About watching me succeed from a distance through internet searches, seeing my name in legal journals, feeling something that might have been pride but was too tangled up with shame to express. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote at the end. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that you were right. About everything. You were always enough. More than enough. We were the ones who weren't enough for you. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to see that. I read that letter 5 times, sitting in my office as the sun set over the river. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Not to treasure it, but to remember it. To remind myself that people could change, could grow, even when it was too late to fix what they'd broken. I wrote back once, a brief note. I don't forgive you. But I don't hate you either. I hope you use your time to become better people. Not for me. For yourselves. I never heard from them again. And that was okay. I'm 42 now, still at Morrison & Associates, though Margaret retired last year and personally recommended me for managing partner. I mentor young lawyers, especially women, especially ones who come from nothing and carry that hunger to prove everyone wrong. I see myself in their determination, their fear disguised as confidence, their desperate need to succeed. You're already enough, I tell them, the words Dr. Warren once told me. You don't have to prove anything to anyone except yourself. The Ella Montgomery Center has helped over 2,000 students in the 5 years since it opened. First-generation students, foster youth, kids aging out of the system, anyone who needs resources and support to believe education is possible. I visit every month, talk to students, share my story. Not to inspire them with some impossible standard, but to show them that making it is possible even when everything suggests otherwise. Last week, a student approached me after one of these visits. She was 19, reminded me painfully of myself at that age. Exhausted, determined, scared. "How did you stop caring what your parents thought?" she asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. I didn't. Not completely. But I stopped letting their opinion of me determine my opinion of myself. I stopped waiting for them to see my worth and started building worth they couldn't diminish even if they tried. Does it stop hurting eventually? I wanted to lie, to tell her yes, it gets easier, the wound closes completely. But I respected her too much for that. It hurts differently, I said honestly. Less sharp, more dull. Some days you don't think about it at all. Other days it catches you by surprise. But you learn to carry it without letting it carry you. And you fill your life with people who choose to love you, and that makes the loss of people who didn't feel less significant. She nodded, eyes wet. Thank you for telling the truth. Here's what I've learned through all of this, what I wish someone had told that 17-year-old girl in the graduation gown: you don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. Not from parents, not from family, not from anyone who made you feel less than. The only permission that matters is the permission you give yourself. My parents thought withholding their approval would keep me small, would make me beg for their validation. Instead, it freed me. It forced me to build self-worth that wasn't dependent on their recognition. It taught me that showing up, that consistency, that choosing people who choose you back, matters infinitely more than biology. Family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who shows up. Who celebrates your victories. Who holds you through failures. Who sees potential when you can't see it yourself. I found that family in friends, in mentors, in colleagues, in students I now mentor who remind me why this work matters. The courthouse moment, making them wait in my office, refusing to save them from consequences they'd earned, it wasn't revenge. It was boundary setting. It was saying no, you don't get to treat me as disposable for 18 years and then demand I fix your problems. It was recognizing that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation, and that justice sometimes looks like letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. That building with my name on it stands as permanent proof that they were wrong about me. Not because I needed to prove them wrong, but because students who feel invisible need to see evidence that making it is possible. That your circumstances don't define your ceiling. That being underestimated can become your greatest advantage if you refuse to underestimate yourself. I still drive past Lincoln High School sometimes when I'm in Salem. I think about that graduation day, about searching the crowd for faces that would never appear. About going home to parents who couldn't be bothered to celebrate the first major milestone of my life. About that moment standing in the living room deciding I was done waiting for them to love me properly. That decision saved my life. Because I stopped trying to earn something that was never going to be given freely, and I started building something they couldn't take away. A career. A reputation. A legacy. A name on a building that will help students long after I'm gone. My mother was right about one thing in that letter. I was always enough. I just had to stop waiting for her to confirm it. So if you're reading this, if you're that person searching the crowd for family that won't show up, if you're being told you're not smart enough, not good enough, won't make it, hear me clearly, they're wrong. Not because I can predict your future, but because their limitations are not your limitations. Their failure to see your worth is not evidence that you lack worth. You get to decide who you become. Not them. You. And when you make it, when you stand in your own version of that office overlooking the city you conquered, or see your name on something that matters, or simply wake up one morning and realize you're happy, that you built a life worth living, you'll understand. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. It's becoming so completely yourself that their opinion stops mattering altogether. That's not just my story. That's freedom. That's justice. That's winning. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between toxic family and your own potential, drop a comment below sharing your journey. Hit that subscribe button for more stories about women who refused to shrink, who chose themselves, who built empires from nothing. And remember, you don't owe loyalty to people who never invested in you. You owe yourself the chance to become everything they said you'd never be. Thanks for watching. And ours? Ours was everything. Thank you for following my story until the end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like down below and share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll be back soon with more stories that remind you that sometimes, the most dangerous choice is also the most beautiful one. Until next time.